Let's bring in now the former Deputy Prime Minister, Nationals frontbencher Barnaby Joyce. Thank you for your time. I want to ask you about that PwC leaks scandal in a moment, but let's start with The Voice, because the Prime Minister is focusing on a big address tonight. He's still expressing optimism that The Voice is going to succeed. He says that's because Australians have a healthy scepticism of doomsayers, a scepticism kept in good health by memories of all the predictions offered by the Chicken Littles of the past. Obviously he's referring to the likes of yourself in terms of arguing the issues with The Voice as a doomsayer. What do you say?
Well, a referendum would succeed if he hadn't overreached, if he'd asked the appropriate question in regards recognition of Indigenous people. But it's this massive overreach. Now, the pejoratives are starting to slip from the Prime Minister's narrative because he's getting a sense of anger. He's getting a sense that he's in a corner, but it's a corner he put himself into. The issue is not that we recognise that Aboriginal people, as they call themselves in my area, have been here for tens of thousands of years. It's this sort of vagueness of the voice for which they will not tell us the details. They insist that that'll happen after the referendum, that will have in a constitution, so we can't remove it, a race-based clause, which means that that you won't get a vote, or maybe do, I don't know. You won't get a vote, I won't get a vote, based on race. And we find this anathema.
But with he's talking about the detail. Isn't the fundamental detail that the Parliament has authority? So it comes down to The Voice doesn't have a veto over anything.
I agree with that. It doesn't. But the way they deal with it, this is
can't fund programs.
This is where it gets so slippery, though. This is where it's slippery. Of course, The Voice does not have a veto. I agree with that. But what it does have...
Parliament's in control.
No, what it does have the capacity to say, in the process of consultation, and this is why it's in the Constitution, so it can be interpreted by the High Court. In the process of consultation, Kieran, you didn't give me all the facts. You erred in a certain area, put too much relevance on a certain area and didn't put enough relevance in another area. Therefore, Kieran, Parliament of Australia, Kieran, your decision, I'm not going to veto it, but it wasn't constitutional. Therefore, it gets kicked out, as if it was never written. And that, of course, if you don't believe that should ever happen, don't put it in the Constitution. You won't have to worry about the High Court interpreting.
But the way... And, with these sorts of things, the High Court always has to look at the intent of a change like this, and the intent is very clear. Well, the Parliament has the authority.
Well, that's also... Judiciability of the High Court is also many and varied thing, and we can see it with immigration cases where people who were born overseas of Aboriginal descent come back to Australia, commit a crime, can't be deported back overseas because the High Court, not the Parliament, the High Court determined that issue. And the TO case, in the live cattle dispute, we are seeing all the time that the High Court has the remit of interpretation of what the Parliament does. The Parliament doesn't interpret itself. The High Court does that. And the ticket to the High Court is to put it in the Constitution. And that's directly where this is going. Now, I believe that if we'd had a different question, we'd have a different outcome. But this is something that the Prime Minister has, and now his biggest argument, Kieran, is this: if you don't marry my child, you're a bad person. His argument now is one of not giving us details, but delivering us guilt and trying to get other people to impugn us with a sense of guilt. And people don't like that. People do not like that approach at all.
Sure. He doesn't have to try too hard to get others to support him right now. You've got the AFL, the NRL, the Rugby Australia, all the sporting codes are on board. Yep. You've got BHP, Business Council,
sounds very much
Law Society. They're all on board.
Sounds very much like the Republican debate, doesn't it? People do not like being told what to do. And I wish I had said it, but I didn't say this. Someone else came up with it. Very clever. If I'm going to take political insight from people who can chase a ball around a paddock, then I'll start listening to my dog. This is not what the Australian Rugby Union should really concentrate on doing is winning games. That's a big issue for them. NRL, AFL, the same. Concentrate on winning the games. I don't preach to Hawthorn or to the Wallabies or to to a range of other football teams on Thursday afternoon about how they should play. I don't turn up to the Raiders training session and say, look, I'm Barnaby from politics, and now I'm going to tell you how I want you to play this game, or go down to Kalen Ponga at the Knights and say, look, Kalen, before you run out, mate, better talk to me. I'm going to tell you how to play. I'll go, watch me, Kalen, watch me. You laugh because it's so damn ridiculous.
But the thing is, these codes do carry weight because they've got a lot of supporters.
Yeah, and look,
and a lot of players, to be fair to them as well, like the AFL and rugby league, young Indigenous stars over generations.
Yeah, and we love, and they'll all have their opinions, and we love watching them play. But the Australian people, if I could be so bold as to say, we don't like being told what to do by guilt. You must do this, otherwise you're a bad person. Or by a third party saying, well, especially corporate Australia, really and truly, their job's to make money. And when people sort of, think, oh, I'll buy the virtue ticket and that allows me to do someone else over on a contract or rip someone else off or, drive my profits forward, but I'll do it with a virtue stick in my hand. People don't like that either.
Chair of Wesfarmers suggested that there would be a hit on our international reputation. Are you open to that argument?
No, I've heard other people say that, refuting exactly that in their own involvement in employing Indigenous people, saying, well, you should have a look at your own honey smacks before you start talking to other people. But let's have a look at this. So many businesses now are bending over backwards for us to deal again with China. You'd agree with that, which has incarcerated the Uyghur people, whipped journalists like yourself off the streets, never to be seen again, incarcerated without trial Australian corporate, people from corporate Australia. Yet they don't seem to have any problems with that. That's apparently not an issue for them nor for anybody else. So spare me the sermon on that one.
With the polling, do you believe that slide will continue in terms of support for the yes vote? Do you, as someone who's been around politics
for a while,
longer than you care to remember, do you see that as an inexorable slide now?
I see it's created by Mr. Albanese and his approach himself. He's brought this upon himself.
So you think they'll lose?
Yes, I do. I think it's a referendum that could have been won if it was not overreach and he'd been more straight and forthright with the Australian people. But being sneaky, and when you start losing, saying, well, if you don't marry my child, you're a bad person. We'll get all the footballers saying you should also marry my child, or get those people to say you should marry. And then when you say, well, where are the details of the voice? Why don't you even mention the voice anymore, Mr. Albanese? Why don't you put up the legislation, put it through both houses, see what we've got, and then you can be straight with the Australian people? Because I wouldn't say to you, Kieran, I've got a house to sell you without telling you how much it was, where it was, what it looked like, how many rooms it had. I wouldn't ask you to buy a car unless I showed it to you first and gave you a chance to run around the street. But you want to change your constitution without actually seeing exactly what you do.
You must have a lot of local constituents who support a voice.
Yeah, I do. I've got people who strongly.
What are they saying to you?
I've got people who strongly support it and strongly don't. I've got also another group of people who don't really know what it's all about, and they're still coming to grips with it. And that's what annoys me.
What do you say to your constituents who want a voice?
Have a very respectful conversation, and I respect their views as to why, and I let them engage with me as to why they believe in it, and I take that on board and I listen to it. I'm swayed by people's views if there's a cogent argument attached to it, and I also do my job as a politician. I say, well, I absolutely respect your views. Now I'm going to tell you why I have mine.
As just finally, I mentioned PwC leaks scandal. You're someone who worked you're an accountant to start your career.
Yep.
What do you make of?
I think there's an unholy alliance between this place and the big four accountancy firms, and the sooner contracts from here start going to middle tier firms and smaller firms, the better.
Okay, Barnaby Joyce, appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
You're welcome.
Thanks as always. Now.